Thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring this video.
So by the time you guys are seeing this video, Harman will have released their newest iteration of Harman Phoenix. So Harman Phoenix 200 was their first ever colour film, Harman Technology's first ever colour film, and it came to market in 2023, and I was lucky enough to test that before it did. So if you've followed this channel for a little while, then you'll have seen a ton of different videos that I've made about Phoenix, about the red scale iteration that Harman made, which was called Harman Red. And in today's video, we're going to be talking about their newest release, which is Harman Phoenix II, and it is the new emulsion basically based off of the original Harman Phoenix. I was sent out some rolls of 35mm and 120 to test out. And in today's video, we're going to be looking at what that looks like. And we're also going to be talking about what has changed from the original Harman Phoenix 200, how the new one differs, if at all. We're going to be looking at how the way you scan Harman Phoenix 2 will yield different results, and we're also going to be jumping into Lightroom to show you how you can tweak film scans. Unfortunately, I haven't had time to print from these negatives, so we're just going to be editing in Lightroom rather than darkroom printing, but that will be another video later on down the line when I get a chance to jump into the darkroom. But let's start off by recapping what Harman Phoenix 200 looked like. So Harman Phoenix 200 was a very experimental colour film, and it was characterised really by a lot of colour shift between exposures, high contrast and a large grain structure. For me, I always found the better results came when overexposing the film. It does have this extreme muddiness and kind of green tint in the shadows when it's underexposed. And so for me, I usually rate it at 100. But that is Harman Phoenix 200. That is the original Harman Phoenix. What does Harman kind of suggest that the differences will be in this new Harman Phoenix? So the first one is improvement in contrast and grain. Secondly, they reference the film stock having a more accurate color palette. So this was one of the criticisms of the original Harman Phoenix, was that the colors weren't really true to life, that they were, you know, there was a lot of those color shifts. They also reference better highlight and shadow retention and exposure latitude, although they do note that it still benefits from kind of like proper accurate exposure. And that brings me nicely on to, is it a true 200 speed? So obviously, as I said before, the original Harman Phoenix 200, I rated it personally at around 100. I thought that that was where it performed best, and I've got videos showing that on the channel. So with Harman Phoenix 2, it also has a box speed of 200, but again, Harman recommends rating it between 100 and 200. So, you know, that could be 160. You can kind of find your middle ground. For my test rolls, I rated it all at 100. So essentially overexposed it by a stop. We're going to stop talking about the film and we're going to start looking at it. I'm going to head into my office and we're going to open up Lightroom and jump into the photos. But first of all, I just wanted to mention today's sponsor, and today's sponsor is, of course, Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community where you can access thousands of courses from different creators across different creative disciplines. As a photographer, there are plenty of classes on there for you to get stuck into. So whether or not you are a film photographer and you want to learn a little bit about film photography, or you're a digital photographer, whatever kind of discipline of photography you kind of fall within, there's something on Skillshare for you. So for the film photographers out there, Kyle McDougall, who you might recognize already from YouTube, has some great Skillshare classes all about film photography. One about 35mm and one about 120, and how you can kind of get started and shoot your first roll of each medium. Or maybe you are interested in learning a little bit about software. So today we're going to be jumping into Lightroom and looking at it. Of course, you can use Lightroom for digital and film photography. So it's a great tool, it's an industry standard tool, and there are so many classes, including one of my own, on Skillshare all about that. One of the great classes that I was watching recently was this class by Sean Dalton. So Sean's class is called Adobe Lightroom, Finding Your Unique Editing Style, and it is all about utilizing presets, creating presets, might I add, and developing your own personal style across your own photography work. So it covers everything from an overview of Lightroom. So if you don't already know Lightroom, we're going to jump into it today. If you're not already familiar with Lightroom, then this class by Sean is a perfect way to get familiar with it. So if you're interested in watching any of the classes that I mentioned or any of the other classes over on Skillshare across business, videography, music production, art, you know, you name it, there's probably something on there for you. So if you are interested in checking out any of those classes, then the first 500 people to use the link in the description or scan the QR code that is on screen right now will receive a 1-month free trial for Skillshare. So get stuck in, see what you can find, and let me know what you learn in the comments. But jumping back into the video, we have of course got Lightroom open, and we're going to jump into a reference view now, a comparison view between two different versions of the same frame. This is Harman Phoenix II, and this is shot in 120, shot on the Fuji GA645, which is a 6x4.5 camera, which means the negatives are slightly smaller than 6x7. Again, if you don't know what I'm talking about, Kyle explains it very well in his Skillshare class, so of course go and check that out. We've got these two frames. This is from a recent shoot that I did with George. So we have the Frontier scanner on the left-hand side and the Noritsu on the right-hand side. And first of all, straight away, what you can see is that the colors are pretty similar. So we've got this, this shipping container is actually bright orange. I'm going to show you a reference on screen now of what this shipping container actually looks like to the eye, a digital reference. On both scans, that is coming out as pretty orange. Skin tones look pretty good, and the ground on the Frontier scans so much more vibrant, so much bluer. Just generally the contrast levels are a lot contrastier. It actually doesn't really look like the same film stock other than this shift where this orange has come out as yellow. What's interesting about that is that there doesn't seem to be a massive shift in other colours. So although we have a bit of blue on the floor here, on this side the gravel doesn't look particularly blue, or not like there's been a shift enough to warrant for this massive shift on the shipping container. The colours are actually so much more neutral and true to life than the previous version of Harman Phoenix from this example. Of course, you've got this like harsher contrast on the left-hand scan and the blue kind of shadows. You've got some green in the shadows here, but generally these look really good. Let me just jump into develop, and I'm going to shift the colors to see if I can get the orange back in that shipping container and see what it does to all of the other colors, because that's really interesting to me. So with temperature, it's just the shift is crazy. Obviously we're not doing this in scanning software, we're doing it in Lightroom on a JPEG. So let's have another look down here, just isolating that. Yeah, you see if I was bringing that back into orange, it just brings the skin way too pink. So that's a very interesting, like, actually now I go back, the skin does look a bit yellow. But I mean, if I go to what it was, it just doesn't look right. So yeah, I'm very interested in how that's happened, how we have such a shift in the shipping container but not in the skin. But generally I think it looks pretty good. Let's jump into another picture to just have a look at how it performs. Sticking with 120, this one here, again, all of this is rated out at 100. And what you can massively see in this is there is loads of halation in the highlights. And that's not something I've noticed a massive amount when I was shooting Harman Phoenix before. So I don't know if that's new to this emulsion. Let's just jump into our library again and put the reference as the other scan, just to see if that halation remains the same. So on the right hand side now, this is the Frontier scan, this is the Noritsu scan. So yeah, we still have that same level of halation. Noritsu looks a lot greener and the Frontier looks a lot more magenta, of course. Let's take a look at this one. So this one here, super green, super blue. This is a Frontier scan again, so contrastier than the last. Let's find the other one. So we've got Frontier on the left and Noritsu on the right. On the right, it's super yellow. On the left, we're super blue. We've got that muddiness in the shadows in both of them. This is matcha, so this is a really good way of working out what it should have been. It should have been, you know, a lot less blue. But then that renders the skin super yellow. So we've definitely got some of those abnormalities with the colour shifts and the shadows, you know, they're just not the same colours between this that looks pretty neutral and pretty true to life, other than this orange, to then this with the crazy halation, and this frame here with the really strong blue cast. If we're looking at a different shoot, this one here is with the Noritsu scan, and this to me looks very true to life. This is very, you know, this could be something like portrait or Kodak Gold. Same with this one. These ones, you know, these came out really well. There's no tweaks on these. If I was to tweak them, I'd probably just add a bit more contrast, maybe slightly adjust the skin tones. Generally, that looks okay to me. Let's have a look at the frontier scans to compare. I've not organised this catalogue well at all. Okay, so this is the frontier scan. You see that I like even more actually. The blue in the ground, I actually really do like that contrast. Again, we've got that halation on that overexposed area, like really badly. Everything else looks good though, like colours I'm happy with. I'm very interested to see how this prints. That's interesting. So this is the same frame. It could just be a difference in scan, but the colours really do shift between these two frames. It's much greener here. It could be slightly underexposed, and maybe that's why. But it also could just be a difference in scan. These were all scanned by Come Through Lab, my amazing lab that I use for development and scanning in Manchester. Take a look at these ones of George. Again, these ones of George, heavy halation. Again, the ones with the borders here, this is the frontier scans. Really heavy halation on those highlights. I actually do quite like it. The contrast is quite nice. I like how these greens have rendered. They look really nice. I think, you know, it's one of those film stocks. This is like really nice direct light, so it's going to be shadowy, it's going to be contrastier, and I think it does, you know, if you can lean into that, it does suit it quite well. Yeah, there's halation, like even on these backboards here, which I wouldn't even have considered to be particularly highlighted. So yeah, heavy on the halation. Let's have a look at the other scan. Yeah, same kind of halation, less contrast on this scan, but I actually think I prefer kind of leaning into the contrast on this one. Let me reset it so you see the straight scan. Okay, let's jump into some 35mm scans, and these were shot on an Olympus OM1. Okay, so we've got, again, this board is not, this shipping container is not orange, it's yellow, but the colours look nice. His eyes look super blue. You can see how thick the grain is. I think it doesn't help that this looks a little bit out of focus, but that grain is super strong. And let me just compare that to one of the 120 shots actually. Yeah, I mean the grain's still strong, a 120 film, but it's definitely a lot more noticeable on 35. This one here is underexposed. We've got this heavy dark contrast. I believe these are the Noritsu scans. Let me just check. Nope, sorry, these are the frontier scans. So frontier scans are the ones with the borders. Yeah, heavy green, heavy blue kind of green cast, but not as strong as some of the Harman Phoenix that I shot from the original iteration. Again, we've got that really bluish tone. That matcha is not that colour in real life. You can see also by this green how blue it goes. These ones here of Malachi, again, super blue in the shadows, but generally I quite like it. It's not too offensive. It's not, you know, it's not your Kodak portrait. It's not that realistic, but I do think that there are some interesting observations to be made about how much more accurate in colour these seem to the original iteration. This was not this light green, it was much yellower. Let's see if we can warm it up a bit. Yeah, so that would probably be more true to what it was, and it hasn't shifted the colours too much either. If we just go between them, it's probably just a scan. Yeah, that seems a lot more true to what it was. It's not as much halation on the 35, it looks. Let's have a look at one that's overexposed. So these were overexposed. I accidentally overexposed these in camera, and it just looks very washed out actually. It doesn't look like there's a lot of halation. It just looks, you know, less contrasty. If I bring the contrast up and tweak it though, that doesn't look too bad at all actually, compared to the one that was rated at 100, and then that is an overexposed with an edit on it. I actually think the overexposed is a lot stronger in terms of colour rendition and detail. I'm looking at that, that is looking too magenta. Let's bring that back a bit. Okay, so here, this is a 35mm shot where we do have halation, and you can see here the dynamic range hasn't held up too well. The shadows are super green, and this halation on the arm is super bright, you know. That hasn't done too well at maintaining both of those details. I reckon there's something you could do with it from a creative standpoint, but it hasn't really held the detail too well. These are the Noritsu scans. I definitely think the Frontier scans look more to my taste. The Noritsu looks, I guess, more neutral, but I think when you have a film stock like this, you kind of want to lean into the contrasty nature of it. Because it's not perfect, you almost want to lean into those imperfections. We also have another roll of film that I've not looked at yet, so this is going to be first kind of look. Let's download those and take a look. Okay, so these were in the studio. These were shot on 120, and these were shot again with the Fuji GA645. Okay, straight away we got that very strong green shadow. I don't know if this is Noritsu or Frontier. I think this is probably Noritsu. I will ask the lab, but based on the other scans and the fact that these have no borders, I'd say that this is probably Noritsu. Very yellow, very green. You know, I don't want to move this magenta slider too much because we're going to start affecting the whites in the image. This is rated at 100 as well, so imagine what it would be like if you had rated this at 200. Yeah, super, super, super green. Like, that's crazy. Very yellow. No halation that I can see. Skin tones here look quite good actually. Those shadows go green so quickly, and then you just have that fall off. Also, this is super orange. This is like a red shirt, so that's interesting to me. Let me try and... Okay, so if I bring that to red, it's actually making the skin a little bit pink. I don't know if it's just because those shadows are so green that it's like making the skin look particularly pink. At least that shirt is a little bit better in colour now. So yeah, some definite colour shifts that are really interesting. I mean, I don't think it looks that good in this scenario, to be fair. It's not, yeah, I mean, this all looks so muddy. It's a difficult one because you can see what it does in overexposure with the halation and those blown out highlights, but then in underexposure it's just so muddy. I definitely think working in an outdoor kind of harsh light scenario works a lot better than these indoor shots. These indoor shots are just not, they just don't look great. I definitely just think it's film stock, and I thought this about the original iteration, that you have to lean into the way it appears. You have to lean into the contrast, the colour shifts, the greens, because if that's not something you want from the film, you're going to have a really tough time in, I guess, tweaking it. I haven't printed it yet. I printed the first iteration and kind of had the same issue in that sense. I'm going to give this a go printing and see how much flexibility we actually have in terms of printing, and I'm also going to scan it at home, so there will be a follow-up in terms of how much can you actually get out of this new iteration. I think the takeaways for me are, it's still not really there. It's not a massive difference from the original iteration. I'd say there are probably some minor upgrades in terms of colour accuracy and contrast accuracy. I don't think it's as contrasty as the last one. The grain doesn't look as noticeable, especially on 120. The colour shifts are still an issue. There's still almost like no rhyme or reason between them, and the way in which the scans differ as well, it interests me a lot. Like, the way that these two different scanners have scanned and processed these images are so wildly different. It's difficult to understand what a true understanding of this film stock is. I think, you know, there's some photos that I actually really like from this. I'm going to put them on screen, the ones I like. I think you'll see that I'm leaning more towards the Frontier, kind of leaning into the contrast, leaning into the blues. Definitely think working in natural light is better. Harsh light, maybe even better. You know, that one of George with the blue shipping container, all that contrast, I think that worked well if you don't mind the halation. It's an interesting one. It's still an experimental film. It's still in early stages, and I think it will still take a lot of, you know, people trialing and testing this film stock to work out how it is best shot, because at the moment there just seems to be such a discrepancy between, you know, shooting it one way and then shooting it the next, and the results that you get from that. But I got usable things. I got things that I did like from these rolls of film. I think actually the 35mm generally was more consistent in terms of photos that I liked. So yeah, that could just be chance. I'll definitely be making some follow-up videos about this film stock because it's so interesting to me as to what is the best way to shoot it. I don't know. Maybe by this time this video's come out, you guys have already got your hands on some rolls of the new Phoenix and you've given it a go. If so, let me know what you think. Did you see much difference between the two iterations? And if so, what were those differences? I'm definitely gonna be making a follow-up video because I feel like there's so much more experimentation you can do with this film stock. So I'm excited to see what that looks like. Another shout out to the sponsors of today's video, Skillshare, for sponsoring today's video. If you are interested in learning a bit about Lightroom, learning a bit about film photography, I know a lot of people message from this channel, they're new to film photography, they're just starting out in film photography. And I think that Kyle's videos on Skillshare are such a great resource if you are starting out in either 35mm or medium format film. And of course, thank you to Harman for sending me out these rolls of film to test. I think it's amazing what they're doing and how they're developing and how they're investing in the film community. And I really wish them so much luck in this journey that they're embarking on. I think it's great that they are keeping film alive in the way that they are. So thank you to those guys for sending this out and making this possible, and keeping it all going for the rest of us. And thank you guys, of course, for tuning in. I will be back soon with another video. It may even be a printing video from this film stock, so keep your eyes peeled for that. But in the meantime, I'm going to link some of the old Harman videos that I made in the description for you to check out. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next one.